Protectionism in Australia. In the 1800s, many reserves were set up around Australia like colonies for Aboriginal people to live on and live segregated from the white immigrants. Before this, the Aboriginals had been plagued by disease and a series of frontier wars that affected their population and greatly reduced their numbers. However, as more and more immigrants arrived and moved into the area, the Aboriginals were pushed off this land, so the government set up more reserves for the decreasing population of Aboriginals to live on and die off. The indigenous population began to grow again instead of dying out, and many more indigenous people were living off the reserves, which created conflict between them and the European settlers. In 1869, the colony of Victoria passed the Aboriginal Protection Act, a policy giving extensive power over the lives of Aboriginal people to the government's border protection of Aborigines, which included places they lived, employment and marriage. As the white people of Australia were experiencing reformation and better living standards, the Aboriginal peoples were losing their freedom. In 1871, the Board for the Protection of Aborigines had full control over the Aboriginals in Australia and what they could and could not do. By 1886, the government had passed laws allowing them to remove Aboriginal and half-caste children from their homes, forcing them to assimilate, becoming part of the white Australian population and abandoning their traditional lifestyles and ways of living. This led to the starting of what is known as the Stolen Generation, where for decades Aboriginal children were taken from their homes and separated from their families. The protectionism policies towards the Aboriginals meant that once moved onto a reserve or taken from their homes, these Aboriginal people were not allowed to follow their traditional cultures or speak their own languages, and many of them lived a life of hardship. Because of these policies, the Aboriginals had little rights and freedoms and depended on the government or churches that had taken over control of their lives. Many of these Aboriginals could not find work and were often forced to live on the outskirts of the town or city they were from, as they were not wanted by the white people who lived around the area. This eventually led to the policy of assimilation being created in 1950 in order to force the Aboriginals into becoming part of the white Australian community and leaving their traditional heritage behind. The idea of this was to make Aboriginals behave like Europeans, and then so they could be treated like them. This policy led to an increase of children being taken from their homes unwillingly and Aboriginal reserves and lands being sold off, with the Aboriginals not being able to get back. This led to the mass protests by the Aboriginals and Australians who opposed the policies and demanded equal rights and freedoms for all Aboriginals.